Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Irish Goodbye podcast. This is a podcast, as you all know, where we talk about people's careers, not just leaders, not keynote speakers, not CEOs, but people who are in the best position of their life, who are climbing the ladder, who are crushing it where they are, getting their opinions, understanding from them where they've done well, what they wish they'd done better, and what they would change about where they are. Today, we're joined by Alex Matarazzo. Alex, please say hello to everybody and introduce yourself to us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Carl. Pleasure to be on and quite an honor. I see you as someone who I aspire to be, a mentor, not just in the business sense, but as a human being. So first and foremost, thank you. Alex Matarazzo, I'm an account executive here at Salesforce in the enterprise banking space by day. As a human being, native of Westchester, New York, sports fanatic, family man, someone who really likes to uplift the community around me and others who are aspiring to be in the tech world or just trying to find their way out of college. So something I'm really passionate about, just helping mentorship. I think it's a real need in the world we live in today. A lot of folks don't have ladders, so that's something I like to do and pride myself on being a ladder for others.
That's incredible. I don't think there's enough of that out there. So a lot of people try to pull the ladders up behind them. If it's hard for them, it should be hard for everybody. So I love that outlook. So you say that you're an account executive. So give me a little sort of idea of what your life from a career perspective has entailed. Did you start as an account executive? Did you come in as a BDR? How have you found your way to here?
Yeah, great question. I actually started out of college at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. Funny enough, it was at the same summer the movie Step Brothers came out. And if you remember, the last line is Will Ferrell saying, "I'm going to go to Enterprise. They give me the tools to be my own boss." So it's safe to say I was the punchline of a lot of jokes that summer. But regardless, I climbed the ladder there, allowed me to really learn how to manage people, operational excellence, managing fleets of like thousands of cars as a manager. And how to sell, right? And then I would drive by the ivory tower of Salesforce every day. And I called up my friend one day and said, "Hey, I want a seat in the tower. What's it going to take? Could you get me an interview?" He said, "You have no tech experience at all." So I went and sold point of sales in credit card processing, competing with the Squares of the world for about 2 years. Talk about a tactical transactional sales process. It was exactly that. After about 2 years, I knocked on the door, interviewed at Salesforce in a small business role. I was told that business development would be the best place to start, right? I'm so glad I did. I started in enterprise business development when manufacturing cloud was just coming to market here at Salesforce. So the why change, why now? What is Salesforce, right? Calling into big manufacturers up in Minneapolis. I think really gave me a solid foundation and tough show. I then went into small business healthcare. I sold into med tech, med device, and behavioral health for about 4.5 years. I then got the consulting itch, after working with so many consultants. I say, we're the lumberyard and the consultants are the job site, right? So I got on the job site, did that for about 9 months with a fantastic partner here in New York, Orion Global Solutions, Salesforce Summit partner. Did about 85% retail work. So it was really refreshing to get out of regulated industries for a bit, chop it up with some cool, innovative retail brands, and then came back beginning of last year in banking. Got the offer of a lifetime supporting our enterprise banking segment and couldn't say no. So I've been about 2 years in this role, and it's been a dream.
That's awesome. I love that you kind of pivoted as well. Like I come from a construction background. I got into tech sales, and my first job in tech sales was selling laptops in Dell over the phone. It was the shelf stacking of tech sales, right? And I love that you acknowledge that being a BDR has helped you, because some of the best salespeople I've ever seen were BDRs first. It gives you that tough skin, makes you know that no isn't the end of the day, and I think it's one of those unsung jobs out there that really, really good sales reps, if they've been really good BDRs, they just tend to have that grit and that grind about them.
I couldn't agree more, and I'm sure you'd agree. Regardless of what your role is, workplace services, right? guest place services, checking folks in the lobby. Like, you can't be defined by your title, right? If you go above and beyond what you're, called to duty for, you can really shine. And I say when you're intentional and genuinely curious and don't waste people's time and make it a little bit about them before you make it about you, you can get really far in this world. So
that's just the human in you, and that's why you've gone as far as you have in such a short period of time. So look, here on this podcast, it's about having a beer as if we were sitting in a bar talking about life and how we get across this and how we convey your life to the people who see themselves in you and want to emulate what you're doing. So with that being said, if your life or your career was a bar, what would be the name of it and why?
It would be Spilt My Pint.
That's against the law in Ireland, right? We throw you out for that.
Oh yeah, on my face. Why I chose that was you don't learn and grow from the wins, right? You learn and grow from the losses and the areas of really just learning from your previous mistakes, right? So they say no is the second best answer in sales. That's a fact, right?
Mm-hmm.
Through repetitions and not just business, but life, you learn how to get better. You learn how to be better the next time. And, I know you're a big sports guy too. I think sports played a big part in my life. In my role, I played Division I college lacrosse. And, it's really easy to beat yourself up over a bad play, but there's usually a lot of game left, right? And you'll usually get another shift or, another chance to get back out there and do something great. And if you do something great the next shift, the next time up, the next at bat, folks tend to forget about the time you struck out. So I like to look forward. Sometimes you spill the pint, but you know what? Sometimes you got to fill up the cup, ask for another, and make sure you don't spill the next one. So
I love that. You really do learn more from your failures than you do your successes. And people the postmortems we do on things are usually wrong. We look at why we won, we try to replicate it. We don't tend to look at why we missed and seed out exactly why. I love that you mentioned sport too. I haven't played sport most of my life. It allows you, obviously, one, contribute to the highest of your capacity, but two, know your position within the team and know how to then lift the people around you or berate them and know the personality that wants either or. That's really important to me.
Yeah, and I see the rugby ball back of you. It's like there's scrums of various types in this world, right? And you're generally trying to move forward alongside a lot of other people, and just those lessons you learn along the way, right? The grit, the tenacity, the ability to overcome. My dad used to say, "When the going gets tough, the tough get going." That rings true in my head kind of every day, right? When a lot of the time it's easy to complain about the little stuff. When really it's all about the big picture.
100%. So you said you called it the spilled pint because you learn from your mistakes. So then how would you define success and how has it changed now from when you started and what's that evolution look like?
Great question. I love this question. It's like most big-eyed, eager, hungry salespeople, you come into the professional world, you think it's all about making money, right? I've come to learn that it's all about relationships. Sorry, going back, Father's Day was yesterday, so I got a lot of references.
Right.
My father passed 5 years ago, God rest his soul, but he lives alongside me every day through his a million Italian analogies and sayings. So, he used to say, treat yourself like a company, right? And then I came to Salesforce and I met a leader by the name of Zach Stiliata Young, who leads Slack. He took it a step further and said, who are you putting on your advisory board? I just stopped for a second and said, advisory board. And he said, yeah, well, when you start thinking about things through the lens in life, not just business, of I need someone I can go to when I need advice about my marriage. I need somebody to go to when I have advice about career progression. I need somebody I can go to about faith. I'm a man of faith, right? Like my pastor plays a big part in my life. I went to him yesterday for some life advice. And you need to define, where you want to go, the different buckets. I think of them as like professional, personal, spiritual, and emotional, right? Mental health wise. So it started out being all about money. A few years into life in the professional world, I realized there's 4 other buckets that are equally as important, right? And if I'm spiritually, emotionally empty, I can have all the money in the world, but what's it going to matter if I'm unhappy and I don't really feel fulfilled as a person personally?
I love that. And first off, respect and honor to your father. Happy Father's Day to him yesterday. Secondly, I love that who's going to be your advisory board. That's really cool because we do try to fix our lives, especially in the roles we're in. Coming with a problem to people is you're never allowed. You have to come with solutions. So having that advisory board is awesome. Yeah, that's something I'm going to take from this immediately because I've gaps on my advisory board.
We all do, yeah.
There's people out there who have stronger faith than others, but the one thing I always said, there's no atheists in the last minute of a game when you're down by 1.
Amen. Absolutely.
So maybe that brings us on to the belief or the mindset that's guided you through tough times. Like obviously there's been tough times emotionally and personally with your father. There's been, tough times in life with career transitioning. So talk us about what's the mindset that gets you through that. And it can't just be grit, right? Because grit only gets you so far. You have to have talent. You have to have tenacity. You have to have EQ and IQ. So talk about those for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. For me, it's, I was having a stressful work week like 2 weeks back. And I looked out the window here in the New York office, beautiful office in Bryant Park, a million people walking around on the street. And I thought to myself about that hungry salesperson years back that would have done anything while maintaining trust as their number one value to get a job here, to start a career here, to just have an opportunity to interview, right? So I think I remind myself like every other day probably that there are so many people in this world that would do anything to have the opportunity I have to make an impact every day, to be able to support my family the way I do because of the opportunity I have the privilege of having. And, when times get tough, it's a long night, you're burning the midnight oil. I remind myself, there's a million people that would love the opportunity to burn midnight oil, right? And it's a true privilege to be busy, to be someone that people come to for advice, not just professionally, but personally. And it's a privilege I don't take lightly. So that's how I look at it.
See, I love that. Every time I go back to Ireland, I have to drive past Dell to get to my mom's house. And every time I drive past it, and I actually go out of my way to drive past it, because I remind myself this is the best, worst job I ever had. Because 1, it got me the career change, but 2, like you said, it's 2:00 in the morning, you're still working on something. You think, well, I could still be there selling laptops.
Yep. And I know that you said, you have blue collar roots too. Like I grew up working construction, high school summers, I was working night shift sanitation. So like when the garbage truck drives by and everyone like holds their nose, I take in a whiff and I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I remember those nights, right? Like I remember that smell, and it's looking back at those past experiences that you realize just like how lucky you are, but also how hard so many people work out there every day and don't complain. So at the end of the day, who am I to complain, right?
Exactly. It doesn't matter the role you're in somebody else's dream job. Like half the joy of having a job, I always say, is complaining about it, right? But you have to realize that whatever job you're in somebody else's dream job. They're looking to get to where you are. Now, you might be looking to get to where somebody else is, but you have to take stock and understand of where you've gotten to and how you've gotten there, especially when it's as meandering as going through being one of the stepbrothers going through enterprise, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll pick you up.
So tell me something that's you think is different in your nature than some of your peers. I won't say all of them because nobody's that arrogant to think they have something that nobody else has. But tell me something that you think is different in whether it's like, I'll give you an example of, for me, it's a chip on my shoulder. Come from a blue collar world, so I'm going to work harder than you. I'm going to, if you're a 1-star ranger, I'm going to be a 3-star ranger. You know, the day an ACT course comes out, I do it that day, right? So that's how I stay mentally in my mind ahead of my competition. How do you do it?
The no filter. And what I mean by that is sometimes you got to take the corporate mouthpiece or filter off and say what needs to be said, right? I think, you know, especially with communication these days, I'm sure you've realized, I've seen the way you communicate. You're a very authentic person. You always have been. You know, it's very easy to make it look like, I mean, a ChatGPT response, right? Like you get emails in your inbox every day and it's like, okay, this went through OpenAI. Like, is there a person behind all this? Or at the end of the day, like I just try to be as direct, especially initially when I'm building a relationship, as direct and intentional as possible. And, you know, making it abundantly clear that whoever's time I'm asking for in a professional or personal setting, I'm not going to waste it. And that I have a point of view to start the conversation with, right? And, you know, I think it's really easy, especially in this world of AI, to start chucking all these buzzwords in and, hey, we want to talk to you about Gen AI capabilities, and hey, I want to do this and that. I'm Alex from Salesforce. When it's like, you know, getting in person too, I think that's something I do a little bit more than my peers. I think after, you know, a pandemic worth of selling virtually, folks are pretty tired of being sold virtually. So it's like night and day. I'm sure you'd agree when you get in a room with a bunch of executives and you're talking about taking some big steps on Salesforce. And I feel like you can achieve what you would otherwise take 6 months virtually in 45 minutes.
Oh, yes. You're probably too young to get this reference, but did you ever see the TV show Columbo?
Yeah.
Right. So at the end of it, he always asks one question. So it was, oh, my wife loved you. One more thing. And he asks a question and it crushes the case wide open. And I call it my Columbo question. So you're walking from the office back to the elevator and their guard is down. And whatever question you were scared to ask in the room, that's the moment to ask it. Like, do you control a budget? Who else do we need to bring in? Whatever it happens to be. Because everyone's guard is way down and you're going back. And you can only do that in person.
100%.
But you also said something there that I'm gonna kind of pull that thread a little bit. You said you're mindful of when you ask for people's time. But you also said at the start of this that you like to give time back to people and you like to, give to your community and you like to mentor. So what do you want from people who get your time?
From people that get my time, and it's usually abundantly clear when someone reaches out to you to either be a mentor or to get an internship at Salesforce. It's really clear if they've done their research. And if you haven't done your research and you're asking someone for their time, call it out nice and early, right? And that goes back to like that no filter piece. You know, I had a young lady reach out to me. She recently graduated from University of Michigan. Her name's Emma. And I could instantly tell she was going to be an incredible saleswoman. I'm trying to get her on board here at Salesforce. But what I loved about Emma that was different from the 100 other college grads that I've tried to help was she said, hey, I don't know anything about Salesforce, right? I don't know anything about Salesforce. So you know what? I just want to make that clear. I really appreciate your perspective. It looks like you were selling point of sale, came from enterprise, and I instantly had her respect. Instantly, she had my ear. And next was, hey, this is what I really need help with. Even if I'm not a really good fit for Salesforce, would you be willing to help me maybe get in the door somewhere else? I see your buddy Robbie's at ServiceNow. He's from the same town as me. I was floored, right? Like that's something I would have done and only learned like a year and a half, 2 years ago. And here's a young lady fresh out of college, set to be the next, exec of Salesforce. So I think doing the research, calling it out, being direct, being authentic goes a long way. And I say, when you're genuinely curious and really intentional with somebody off the bat, they're generally willing to help you, right?
Yeah, I agree with that too. So I always think language is so important, and how we use it is so important. That you say to somebody, "Tell me about your, I don't know, your AI infrastructure." Sounds like a demand. But if you say, "Help me understand your AI infrastructure," you're asking for help. And you're showing vulnerability, you're showing integrity, and you're showing honesty, and how you get dealt with is entirely different.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And the way in which you frame those questions, it's just the most subtle little tweak to make it a lot more of a genuinely curious place of interest and an initial point where it starts, that really opens up the door and gets people to see you as a human. There's discovery, running sales calls. You often hear of it as discovery. It shouldn't be an interrogation. But you hear some people run discovery, and it's like, by question 4, the customer's like, "All right, how many more of these do we have left?" Right? Or, "All right, something actually just came up. Do you think we could reschedule?" Because they just feel like, again, they're in the hot seat. They're just peppering question after question. And then softening statements, right? Like, great question, ways to really soften things when customers do push back. All those little, would seem like small details from like a soft sales skills perspective, they all really matter.
Absolutely. One thing I've always liked to do is, if you're going to ask somebody about where they have friction and where they have pain, ask them what they're doing well first. Give them the win, and then ask about where the future project is taking them and what's stopping them getting there now. But give them the win. They'll be a lot more nice with you throughout the friction then.
100%. My favorite thing to do when I get a new account is I'll go to the case, the customer service cases. I'll find like the top 3 cases. I'll find 3 different people. I'll reach out to them and ask if our response and follow-up was sufficient. Catches them off guard. They want to know who I am. I let them know this is the first place I came. Instant trust, instant credibility. Then I like to go into, when I get executives around a table, I like to make it all about maximizing the investment of what you have today. Like, I want you to use 100% of what you have in the shed before you make another investment with Salesforce. And hey, if we take a look at the 3 tools you're not using in the shed, right? Like the weed whacker, the lawnmower, and like it doesn't make sense to use them. Sure, then we can move on to other discussions. But I think just that different approach and having respect and almost putting yourself in the customer's seat and addressing the elephant in the room of like, hey, we spend a couple million annually with you guys. Here comes the Salesforce account executive that's going to try to shake me down for another 2 million, right? It's just it's a really great way to stand out and differentiate yourself and be more of a human being.
I'm gonna challenge you on that. I don't think you're just standing out and being different. I think you spoke earlier about how you lead with trust, you lead with integrity. I think that's just having integrity. So I don't think you're sort of Machiavellian about it, where you're doing it to stand out. You're doing it because you think it's the right thing to do. It just happens to make you stand out.
I appreciate that. And likewise, I've seen the way in which you command a boardroom and run, in person on sites, whether it's here at the tower or with your customers. And it's just the way you communicate so authentic. And, you bring personal stories and touch points to meetings that I think really allow execs and senior leaders to be a little bit vulnerable and thus share a little bit more, probably even overshare at points. And it makes other people like me look and say, oh, wow, I should be myself a little bit more. And
I do think that's missing in the world at the moment. I think people think if they're going into a meeting, they need to be buttoned up. I'm not saying we don't need to be prepared and buttoned up, but Alex is still Alex and Carl is still Carl, right? So that personality should be seen in the room.
Absolutely.
So with that being said, what's one thing you'd, if somebody's coming into your career now, or say coming in as a BD or coming in as an AE, what's something you would tell them to try and skip some of the nonsense or some of the cul-de-sacs you end up going down? How would you help them benefit from your mistakes, or what guidance would you give them?
Great question. I say this.
That's a softening statement. You just taught me that.
That's good. I say this, especially in an entry-level sales role, like business development, what I loved about it was I could crush my metrics. Maybe it's 20 meetings a month. I try to set those as quickly as possible. And then I'm going to be a little bit selfish with my time, right? So the question I ask, if you're starting your career in sales or anywhere in business, is what are you doing with the downtime you have? Because even more so than when I was a BDR, when it comes to learning artificial intelligence, I know you have certifications, obtaining certifications on various platforms, whether it be AWS, ServiceNow, Salesforce, whoever. What are you doing with your free time? And I think the pandemic certainly taught us how to be really efficient with our time, how to get the job done in maybe a shorter amount of time and be more efficient. But then you have a gap, right? And of course, it's important to take care of your mental health, your physical health, your family around you, emotionally, spiritually. But there's often a lot of downtime in the day that if you just learn, I call them like micro learning sessions, where I'll just block off a few 15-minute blocks in my calendar. Those will be different topics every week, and every topic has a different color. So it might be faith-based, it might be work-based, it might be personal development, it might be about sports, right? But I'm having these various blocks where I'm diving in and micro learning. There's also a lot of information out there now, right? We're on a podcast right now. There's a podcast on anything. So I think where it's really easy to sit in bed and scroll through my phone at night, I started doing micro learning, getting back into reading. I wasn't reading enough books before 2 years ago. Got rid of my TV in my living room and put a big bookshelf there. And I think there's just a lot we can be doing to lean in and learn. And that's my motto of the year, actually, is lean in. So
I love that. Well, look, the last question we ask on the Irish Goodbye podcast on every episode is, we're about to get up from the bar, leave 2 stools at the bar. So what are you going to write on the napkin on the bar for the next person to take the seat? What's the one bit of advice on life that you'd like to leave behind?
It's not how you start, it's how you finish. I think it's really easy to beat ourselves up. I'm actually going to go back to one of my dad's quotes. I was a week out of college at Enterprise Rent a Car. I came home. I said, "Dad, I'm so stressed. I'm so upset. Work's been so tough this week." And he said, in his old school Queens accent, he said, "Alexander, we got 40 years left of this." And I just stood there in the kitchen and looked at him. He said, 40 years. And so I tell myself that every day. I'm a little stressed going home, and it makes me laugh. Don't beat yourself up over the details, the things you can't control. Negative self-talk, right? It's so easy to get into that Ferris wheel of negative self-talk. Focus on what you can control. Tomorrow's another day. I know you've heard various quotes about overthinking the future, and 85% of it is just a fallacy that never happens. This is a marathon, not a sprint. So sometimes taking 2 steps back to take 10 steps forward is okay, right? When I came to Salesforce, I stepped out of a closing role, put my ego aside, came into a business development role, and in 6 years, I'm able to get to enterprise banking. So I think you got to look at the long-term perspective of things and see it as an ultra marathon, not a 40-yard dash.
I love it. Well, Alex, you're a talent, you're a gent, and thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate you, and wish you very, very great things in your career. I know it's ahead of you. I know there is greatness in you. It's already achieved most, and what you're going to go on and achieve will be amazing. So thank you for your time.
Appreciate it, Carl. A lot left in the ultra marathon, but just want to say thank you. You're a mentor, not for me, but for 80% of the salespeople I know at Salesforce here in New York. So look forward to seeing you around and look forward to hopefully grabbing a pint soon.
Sounds good. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Take care.